Business Takeout presents
The CockTale Hour with L.A. Wade.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the CockTale Hour. My name is L.A. Wade, and I'm here representing Business Takeout, a social enterprise that is geared towards empowering and inspiring Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship. And today in the CockTale Hour, I am in the presence of one of my mentors. She may not know that, but and I'm sure a mentor to many people, let's just be honest. I am speaking with Celina Caesar-Chavannes, and she is the author of this book. Hear me now. I just popped it up out of nowhere. Celina, welcome to the CockTale Hour.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am such a fan of yours. So I guess recognize game in this podcast right now.
Listen,
so we're good.
Don't even make me blush. I'm already nervous. I was telling Banky, first of all, the 3 Grenadian women that are representing the show just got a big up Grenada, which is near and dear to all of our hearts. Yes, I love it. Now, I know we don't have a lot of time because we have an hour, and the CockTale Hour is 1 hour. So let's jump in because I want to break this conversation down into what your life was like in the early years of coming to Canada, and anything that happened to you in between leading up to politics, what your life was like during politics, of course, what was like after you left politics, and what might happen after the fact. This is a big deal for me also, just before I take over the whole show. I just want to thank you for trusting me in sharing your story. This documentary means a lot to me, getting the opportunity to work with you and your team and our all-female cast and crew is just life for me. But I'm a gender equity kind of woman. You know, it's not just women empowerment. So we will have some men involved, but we want the voices of women, diverse women included, which is a big part of what it is that you talk about in relation to the type of leadership that you want to see in politics. Can you start there actually before we jump into your life path?
Sorry, did you say start there? Sorry.
Yeah, just because I just mentioned it, I thought we might be able to start in terms of diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
We've made a big deal about it.
Yeah, you know what? I actually was cleaning up my house, doing spring cleaning, built some built-in shelves, you know, little things, little projects on the weekend, right? And
I don't do that, by the way.
Come back and see these shelves. These shelves are like so nice. Oh my God, they're so beautiful. Anyhow, I'm cleaning it out and I'm looking through all of my old stuff, and I find the letter that I write when I ran for president of my grade 12 class at St. Thomas Aquinas in Brampton. And the premise of it is around multiculturalism and the fact that at that time, which is 1997, 1998, 1992, 1991, 92, that Aquinas needed a woman's touch. Like we needed to have more gender diversity. So I have been on this journey for a very long time. And as we start to actually take pride in and acknowledge people with multiple intersecting identities, including gender diverse folks, trans folks, we need to step up when it comes to that. We know what harm is caused to those individuals who identify as such. We know that it's not just harm, bodily harm, it's death too. So we need to stay grounded in this conversation when it comes to people with multiple intersecting identities, and knowing that the more that you have, the more likely that you will be left behind in today's society, and that can't happen on anybody's watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you always put the diversity and inclusion part. A lot of us talk about the representation of diversity, but if we are just seeing diverse people, that doesn't mean or say anything.
No. If representation matters in politics and business, in no matter what kind of political, financial, social sphere, then those representatives need to speak to what matters. They need to understand those multiple intersecting identities and speak to what is going to help those who need it the most. And that
they lack understanding, you know, Celina, like they really lack understanding. And not that this has anything to do with our conversation, but because it's such a hot topic with Will Smith and Chris Rock, it makes me think about the fact that he's been holding something in for a very long time, and it kind of just exploded last night in the Oscars. I wonder, to talk about the pressure of that representation and being this ideal person to so many. What is that like for you?
Yeah, so I think I've been feeling uneasy all day.
Yes.
So Tanya Hale's Black Moms Connection put on her timeline, like, be careful what you put on your timeline, what you absorb today. You could like just get off the socials if it's okay. And I looked at that. It was the second thing that I saw when I scrolled on Instagram today, and I was like, yep, that's it. I'm out. And you could clearly see in the interaction, in the speech, that there is a lot more to unpack, which I don't think any of us are credible to speak about. But what I do know for Will Smith and somebody who has that kind of power is that there were so many things that went wrong last evening, so many things. And it's a challenge when you're in those positions and that emotion like just bubbles up, and people will say, oh, in the same way that I made public my conversation with the prime minister, oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't do the other, but you weren't there for 4 years having to deal with the constant, continuous microaggression after microaggression, after racist behavior, after sexism, after sex. You were not there.
Right.
So tell me when you're going to run. Tell me when you're going to put your name on the ballot. Tell me when you're going to have the exact same experience as I had.
Yeah.
And then tell me if at that moment, what you would have done. Now, I'm not condoning violence. I'm not condoning these totally inappropriate jokes that pick at somebody's intersecting identity. But tell me in that moment that you can do something different than I did because you've been there. And if you haven't been there, take some seats.
Yeah, I find that we were discussing when I first met with you for the beginning of the documentary, we were trying to tease apart this understanding of how to develop empathy within people who don't have a stake or a buy-in to have that empathy. And I feel like the Will Smith situation is everybody's getting the opportunity to observe this thing.
Right.
And of course, there's some of us that are empathic, and so therefore we understand and we try to go from a different perspective. But there's many that are just observing and saying, wow, and that's where it kind of ends for them. So what is the leap, in your opinion, towards transformative leadership, which I know you promote all the time?
Oh my gosh. So this is an anomaly of a situation, right? Because there was a clear explosion and you're at the end of the rope, right? And it's a snap. What needs to happen for transformative leadership to occur in spaces? And remember that what we saw on the Oscars happens every day. Oftentimes, to remember who was at the beginning of this, the Jadas of the world, right? To Black women of the world. That happen on a daily basis, where you have somebody in your office, at your school, at your institution, making some joke, and there is no Will Smith around. There's nobody that's going to say, check yourself. There's nobody that's going to say, take her name out your mouth. There's nobody that's going to say, stop running your fingers through her hair. There's nobody that's going to protect her.
Right.
And so this transformative leadership, instead of analyzing this one moment to death and thinking that you have some kind of opinion as if you are absolved from any kind of crime, that is when you need to sort of check yourself and think, when was the last time I heard a joke about a Black woman or someone with multiple intersecting identities that I did not stand up? Maybe I didn't slap somebody, but I didn't even have the decency, the courage to stand, to sit, to say anything.
Yeah.
Check yourself in this moment. Check yourself, what you do, how you respond, if at all you actually respond. Because what happened to Jada has happened, I could say, there's how many 8 billion people on the planet. We make up about how many percent? I could say a good billion times today alone that what happened to Jada happened to another Black woman on the planet.
Yeah, except there was no Will Smith to stand up for us.
With no Will Smith. Well, I'm hoping that today, a few more Will Smiths at least stood up. I'm not saying go around slapping people. I'm saying that at least stand up in your power. And that is what Will Smith, in my opinion, should have done yesterday. Just stood up in his power. He could have locked that show off for a good 20, 30 seconds, just saying, take my wife's name out of your mouth. Like, just stood there in his power.
Slapping him. He could have just done that.
And shut it down.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
Yeah, you're giving me goosebumps, actually, because I'm a very body thinker. I think with my body. And I cannot wrap myself around all that represents for me personally, and how much people will reduce this to who they think Will Smith is, and how difficult. This is the empathy part, where people don't understand what it's like to be in these positions of power and have to navigate and negotiate your space.
Right.
And your race and your space.
Your race, your space,
and
your everything. So your traumas, your hurts, your insecurities, all of that comes into that moment. All of that came into the moment where people were like, well, why did you talk to the reporter? Why did you say anything? Why couldn't you just? Why didn't you just? Why couldn't you that? Oh my God, I can't believe you this. Clutch my pearls. Really, I beg you, be there. Yeah. Be there in that situation. And yes, maybe I made a wrong decision. Maybe Will Smith was not making the best decision at that time. We've all been there. And this is where the empathy comes in, understanding our own story and how it might coalesce with someone else's experience, and say, look, well, we've been there. Maybe you may not want to knock the rocks off of Chris Rock.
Well, man. It makes me think that he's done it. I mean, there was some throw to back in 2016 where he was kind of berating Jada then as well. So I think there's been a history. No one just reacts that way out of, there must have been a history that we just.
I don't know. I don't follow it. I just felt saddened by everything, and knowing that Summer of Soul won an Academy, and I turned it off, and I was just like, no, that movie was the greatest thing ever.
That is amazing. Yeah. Well, in your own power, you've had to face your own, barragement of the things that came against you, and I think you've handled everything with the best of class that you could possibly do. I mean, nobody knows what it's like. So I want to start again at the beginning, where we track your journey towards politics in your first comings to Canada, where you mention, these names, Veronica, Caesar, Doral. Like, what are these names meaning for you? How did these people facilitate what we now know as Celina?
My grandparents. My grandparents, Veronica and Doral Caesar, and then on my dad's side, and my maternal grandmother, Ina Ella Wilson. They just taught me so much. I spent the first couple of years of my life with them as my parents moved here, and then I came afterwards. Yeah. And I just believe that their spirit has always guided me, especially Veronica Caesar, who I didn't really call grandmother in my later years. I called her Miss Caesar, because she was just such this force of nature. She was an entrepreneur. She was like a savvy, business savvy, political savvy woman who just
Well, I wonder where that came from.
Who didn't suffer fools lightly. Like, when she spoke, it was like, is she talking about me? Because I hope she's not talking about me. You had to question your own legitimacy as a human being when she was around. And she was just so fierce and awesome. And she wasn't like the cuddly kind of grandma. My grandfather was really tickly and huggy and, really sweet.
You actually mentioned in your book about being, the love of your life, in a sense, and the person who taught you love. What did that love look like to you then?
That was my first foray into unconditional love, irrespective of what you look like, what people think about you, what you meet this person, and it's like they're seeing you for the first time, and you are like the most precious, shiny, thing that they've ever seen. Like, his light was bright, and it only made your light brighter. It was so he was just that person that I always felt like a child when he was around. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean? Like he
absolutely.
would protect, that he would love, that everything would be okay if he was there. And then when he wasn't, my world was just like, it was just totally destroyed. It's like, now you're on your own. Now you're really on your own.
Yes, but it's kind of like, the Lion King, where they say, I'm always there for you, and
Yes.
just look to the stars and you will be guided.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what I get from you when I was speaking with you, that but you made a promise to them that you would go back to Grenada. Can you actually picture yourself living in Grenada at this stage in your life? Hard, right?
Well, I don't know who's watching, but there is a little secret that that I'm purchasing property in Grenada. Yeah.
There we go. So you are.
So I think the promise of going back to take care of them, I will be able to honor that promise. Not them physically, but we are all spiritual beings having this physical journey. So I know I'll be able to go back and take care of them, meaning our legacy, our island lineage, our heritage there. I will go back for sure.
I hope that when you do go back, and I might join you in this endeavor. I read one of the country papers for Grenada, and they talked about wanting to really inspire young people to get into agriculture and have more young farmers, because there's not enough. The older ones are dying out, and food security and all of these things. And your family came from the farming industry.
For sure.
That might be something. Could you see yourself spearheading and getting into politics in Grenada?
You're just putting out all the tea, right?
I'm just here asking.
First you buy land, and then you live there for a while, and then you run. So that is the 10 to 15-year plan.
I love it.
To get back into politics there. And I think that there's a real energy happening in the Caribbean right now, especially with Mia Motley taking that first move for independence. We saw Jamaica doing it as well. I think the power of the Caribbean as a collective, beyond CARICOM, beyond just sort of the writing or the sort of policy of being together, but actually putting their resources together and becoming self-sustained, becoming the first region in the world to be totally green. That is totally possible, but it requires a certain degree of leadership, and leadership that doesn't have their pockets lined with money from other nations.
Right. Well, I look forward to this campaign, if there is one, because Grenada could do with a female prime minister. That would be interesting. Just putting it out there.
It would be interesting. We have a lot of work to do. The great thing is that we're poised and we're ready to do it.
Exactly.
Right? We could skip over a lot of mistakes that other nations have made because we're still growing, because we're still maturing. And I think that we have a lot of great potential, especially in agriculture, yes, but in also other industries. We cannot solely depend on tourism to keep us going forever. We have to sort of diversify our economic power.
Yeah, I'm one for agribusiness, because there's one thing about food security, but there's so many people living abroad that want these things that Grenada has, that we need to figure out an export-import situation. But I know I'm not going to get political, because it's so funny that I didn't realize that I am actually a lot more political than I realized, but I'm not. We were talking about this, politics versus political.
Yes.
And I'm not into politics at all, because I don't like the tricks of politics.
Right.
You know what I mean when I say this?
Yeah, but everything about us as people, especially as Black women, is political. Yeah. From the top of our head to the soles of our feet is political.
Yes. Let's to the Crown Act, don't you
worry. Right. We everything about us is political. And so we have to navigate this world thinking politically every single step that we make.
Yeah. So I want you to fill in the blanks of this sentence. Okay.
I was afraid of what you're going to say.
I don't know why you're afraid. I'm afraid to ask. Okay, here we go. If my parents understood blank about me, then blank. So if my parents understood about me, then
if my parents understood if my parents, and what is the word I'm looking for? If my parents understood
Complexity.
the grandness, the boldness, the audacity. If my parents understood the audacity of me,
Then what would happen?
then they wouldn't be surprised by anything.
So they are surprised.
Well, I think they've been surprised every time I change, a job or like a position. So, graduating and sort of failing out of university, then starting an award-winning, research management firm, then winning federal elected politics. It's like, what? And then, telling off a leader of a
Prime
G7
Minister.
country. You're not going to be surprised by that because you'll know that the audacity of me is that it's grounded in something. I don't just go off, shoot my mouth off on everything, right?
Yeah. I feel like our parents are surprised by who we are, yet they came to this country for us to become all that we could become. But something got lost.
Well, they took a risk coming here, right? So they had the audacity to do that as well.
Right.
So I'm sure that there were people in Grenada going, Dessa, why are you leaving Grenada? It's so nice, and we have mangoes, all kinds. So they still took that risk and came here to make the lives of their children better.
Right.
I am here. So I now have to take a risk and be audacious to make here better for my children.
Right.
It's the same kind of principle. It's the same kind of logic. We are just using two different times or spaces and times in two different geographical locations.
Right.
Here, the stakes are a little bit higher. Of course, it's bigger. So the risk is bigger. The audacity or the boldness of the endeavor also has to be bigger. We come from that lineage of people who are big. We are go big, go home people, Caribbean people, Black people, people of African descent. This is how we roll. So I'm not sure what more my parents
expect. Exactly. I mean, I hear all the time, what? You've come so far, but you should be a little bit, they want me to tone it down. And I'm thinking, white parents are not telling their kids to tone anything down.
No.
I grew up with a lot of white women just being free to do everything and be everything that they want. And I decided that I was going to emulate that because I feel like I can be anything and everything that I want. But
exactly.
Then that messaging comes in that not you, not
right. But then again, we have to think about who wrote those rules that said that we need to calm it down, that we need to be seen and not heard, that we need to accept our position at the table and, be gentle and quiet and polite. Who wrote those rules? Because I am pretty darn sure that nobody that looked like me was at the table when somebody wrote that rule. Because I would have been like, you know what? Yeah, we're going to have to take that line out. Yeah. And that one right there, no, that's not going to work for me. So people say, I break rules. I don't break rules. The rules were never meant for me in the first place. How could I break something that wasn't mine?
Right? That part.
That part. Please don't tell me what I broke. I didn't break nothing.
But that speaks to when we say that there's not enough, not only representation, but inclusion in the government and the paper pushers, right? The people that make the rules. Where are we to represent those types of things, to say, no, that doesn't belong there because my people need something else to be written there.
Right. And it's not even that too. So, I often talk about the repealing mandatory minimums, which was a 2015 campaign commitment. It was a promise. And it still hasn't happened. In the last government, there was a repeal of a partial amount of mandatory minimums. Mandatory minimums are unconstitutional. We know that they cause an overrepresentation of Black and Brown people in prisons. People know this.
Yep.
They know it's wrong, right? So it's not just a matter of what's written down, what people know. It's a matter of having enough of a critical mass in there to say, no,
right.
We are not going to be held hostage by your political will. For example, if we remove or repeal mandatory minimums, we would look soft on crime, or we won't get reelected. No, you cannot exchange your political expediency for what is good for the people.
Right. Well, there's a small group of people representing a very diverse group of people. So that's part of the problem.
Right. And that exchange is, look, Black and brown guy, stay in prison a little longer because, if I release you, I'm not going to get reelected. So,
Lord, imagine that is what they're saying. And we're accepting.
Imagine.
Like,
that is to live reality. That's not an imagine.
Rhetorically, this is like, imagine that. That talk about audacity.
No, that is the reality. That is reality. That is why mandatory minimums have not been repealed. That is why you still have Black and Indigenous people overrepresented in a position for that reason, and many others, including racism and bias that exists in the system. That's why you have an overrepresentation of Black and Indigenous children in our welfare systems, because of those issues. So we need to get past political expediency. We need to have the power returned to the people. We need businesses to step up. We need regular organizations to step up. We need people to step up. Right. If it's bad for us, it's bad for everybody.
Everybody, exactly. There's definitely something to be said about that. Going back to your journey towards politics, when you first came to Canada, I think I read that you thought that the country was unfriendly. You kind of like, you didn't feel included in a sense. There was a dislocation.
Well, I was coming from Grenada, right?
Right.
And like the houses are painted pink and blue, and and I have this one image in my head, or a couple of images of the apartment that we had in Rexdale, and the only thing I see is dark gray, snow, cold. Even like after like 40 something years, I still have this image in my head. And so how can I, after running around free in this warm, colorful, inviting environment with my grandparents and like people who are basically probably just letting me like rule the world at that point, and then coming into a more restricted environment where you had to keep a close eye on your girl child, and you had to make sure that, she wasn't running wild in the street and, running up to the neighbors and the rum shop and all kind of thing. You couldn't do that.
It's true. You cannot.
That was just the reality of the situation. Coming from those two places, you can't say anything but this place is cold.
Yes. And then the feeling a sense of unbelonging and trying. Right. I don't know if you went through the trying to fit in, but I went through a whole bunch of phases of trying to fit into my peer group until I think all you as well in high school, finding other Black people was a big deal.
Big deal. Well, I mean, even coming in from Grenada, right? So I spent 2 years without my parents. I come into a family situation, and it's like, well, who are y'all? Because I don't know y'all, right? So I'm struggling to fit in here, and then I'm going to school, and I in my kindergarten class decide, no, this bus ain't dropping me home last. I'm gonna just walk home, walking down John Garland, like across Finch down to Silverstone. Like, who does that?
Are you crazy?
Right? But this is like, drop me last? Are you and this is kindergarten me, and then everybody's shocked that I like tell off prime ministers. No, you all should have seen this coming miles away.
But that same part of you that is telling off prime ministers is also the same person that got you elected.
Yes.
Right. By the people.
Yes. Authentically, Celina. Authentically. The first title for my book, Can You Hear Me Now, was actually called Authentically Celina. What you see is what you get. There is no other version of me to be expected. You are not going to see me hanging with my friends and being like, oh my God, she's so quiet and nice. No, you're going to see me acting the fool in the fete. You are going to see me living my best life. You're going to see me smoking cigars and drinking champagne and, doing all that. So that is me.
Right. Will those things you think I know that in campaigns, they like to come up and throw these things out to the public and,
Yeah.
picture. No, it wouldn't stop you it
No.
didn't stop you from getting elected.
No. I'm good. What? Do I smoke? Yes. Yes, I do. Any other questions? Because I mean, if you haven't, like, you really should try.
You really should try.
You should try it. Just once.
What's your favorite strain?
Right? Yeah, you like get with it already.
I know.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna hide those parts of me, because those parts of me, those things that we tend to like push to the side and hide, end up, especially in a political environment, becoming someone else's story. And you are not then able to narrate your own story in those moments, because somebody else has taken what you thought was hidden and made their own narrative around that. That ain't happening with me. I'm good. I'll tell my own story.
I love it. I love
Thank
that.
you. Yeah.
Okay, let's stay in your youthful time. Rodney King. Rodney King was around in high school. What did that moment mean for you in terms of how you saw your environment?
Man, it was, so of course, very political all my life. My father we would have these great discussions about, the state of where we are in Canada, the United States. And at that time, it was one of those moments where it was like, we'd heard things in Brampton with Ray Lawson. We heard like all of these different things happening.
Yes.
And for it to now be on national television with Rodney King, it was a moment, just like George Floyd was a moment to like say, okay, let's take it to the streets. Let's really try to use this moment, not just for what it appears to be, but to change policy, to change our trajectory as Black communities forever in this country.
Yeah, I find we have such an interesting interaction with these formative times, like the Watch riots. There's things that happen that everything kind of amalgamated up to a point, and then something had to tip.
Right.
And so Rodney King was one of those times for us. You mentioned George Floyd now and what that's doing for the forward movement of our people. Who are the people that are not being heard outside of us? Because if I want to put on the table that, can you hear us now? And it's really that dichotomy of Black and white, those conversations of Black people, white people. There's a whole spectrum of people that also get left out of that conversation. So how can I, as a Black person, want to even have empathy for people that are like me, but that I also have no connection to their experience?
We have connections to everybody's experience.
Talk about it.
That is the power of Blackness, because we know what it's like to not have rights. We know what it's like to be removed from our land, have our names stripped of us, our identity, the violence that ensues from colonialism. We are very much connected with Indigenous people around the world. We are very much connected when it comes to the lack or the dismissal of human rights as it relates to even modern day refugees. We do not have a choice. And this is why you often find that Black women are at the forefront of a lot of these very political movements.
Yes.
And albeit we're not usually the benefactors of what happens next, the great stuff that comes of our action, but we will stand. We will move forward. When we think of Black Lives Matter, when we think of the origin of that group, now everybody's Black Lives Mattering like it's vanilla. But you got to remember, when those women started back they were called terrorists.
Yes, we often do that. We other our experience, and those of us within our own group will often do that. I hate
in our group and beyond. Yes, right? We distance ourselves.
Yeah, if I could change anything about the Black experience, it would be about us recognizing the strength in our diversity within our own group. That often just gets overlooked. And there's a shaming. So I know that you've had during your formative years, there's been an impact of shame throughout everyone's life.
Mm.
And I think this is something that can also help people hear us now, because there are touch point subtitles that we all can address and understand. So talk to me about shaming during your formative years and how it's impacted you then and ongoing.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I wrote Can You Hear Me Now? Can You Hear Me Now? I really wrote about I could have written it differently. I could have written the book talking about all my successes, the things that I did right, the awards, everything else. But I wrote it sort of upside down. I wrote about all the guilt and the shames, like, almost failing out of university after, graduating at the top of my class in high school, graduating with a 1.58 GPA at a university, leaving there and having to basically start all over, assault, marriage issues, abortion, you name it, it's in there. I've basically done it.
Right.
And so when we think about writing from that, when I thought about writing from that perspective, my editor had actually asked me, Celina, do you want to write a book that hurts, or do you want to write a book that heals? And it was so emotional for me because I was coming out of politics at that time, and I really wanted to heal not just myself, but I knew that if I, with the privilege and the power that I had, was going through these experiences,
Yeah.
and they only made me better, why wouldn't I tell people about them so it can make them better?
Exactly. And this is why I identify with you, because as people always say, why don't you change the name of the Cocktail Hour to now reflect the drink? Because my show before was Cocktail with LA, where I talk about my own abuse. But I said, you know what? I'm going to maintain that line that was a part of my past. Even though I'm doing something a little different now, it's still a part of who I am. And it's a reminder, so that if people are paying attention to the name of it, they'll ask a question. And that curiosity for me is my way of having people develop empathy, because if they know our story, there is a little bit of a softer approach. It may not change everything. Now, talking about owning your mistakes, you wrote about this in the book. What did owning your mistakes look like during high school, university, and in politics?
High school, university, and in oh my God. In high school, it looked like, how quickly can I get out of this mistake or hide it? Okay, so in high school, it was hiding the mistake. University, it was lying about it. Like, it was a complete cover up. It never happened. I lived 4 years of my life in this complete pretense that everything was going so well, and everything around me was completely crumbling.
Wow.
And I think that those experiences prepared me for politics, or for later on in life, where you try to live as a fraud in federal politics, you are done, right? So I would basically said, yeah, been there, done that, not doing that again.
Yes.
And it actually helps to, like you said, to develop that empathy, that empathetic courage to be able to stand in your values and principles. Because I know I didn't want to live that way again, but I also know that what it felt like to feel like I was going to be defined by the worst thing that I've ever done.
Right.
To feel like I was going to be left behind because I made a mistake.
Right.
And so all of those feelings, that real pain and that hurt, is actually what grounded me and made me so passionate about advocacy, about activism. Again, when it comes to mandatory minimums or criminal possession of weed, etc., like those kinds of things. No, I'm not going to back down. It made me very sort of passionate when I came out and talked about Jody Wilson-Raybould and stood in solidarity with her. I was not going to let her sort of hang on her own. There was just no way that was going to happen, not on my watch.
Right. But did you feel the same solidarity with you when your situation became so public? Did you feel that same solidarity?
I did have that solidarity from a few people. But again, I think just like myself, Jody, Jane, when you have women of color, when you have Black women who have, like, first of all, let me just back up a little.
Sure.
Between 2015 and 2019, when I was an elected official in the 42nd Parliament, there was no dress code for women. Why? Because women weren't supposed to show up. No, it's not funny. There was no dress code because there was a dress code for men that they could dress the speaker with a tie and they had to have a jacket on. There was no dress code for women. So you'd see me sometimes show up in Parliament with jeans and a t-shirt. Like literally I'd wear like Mark Stoddard's t-shirts all the time in the house and rise in the house wearing, because they couldn't tell me anything.
Right.
And I say that because the reason why I don't think that there was any much solidarity, especially when I was talking about racism, I was being gaslit. I was called the most racist MP in Canada. I was, I talked about mental health. I was, if you have that problem, like, why'd you take that job? I was destroyed on a number of different areas.
Yes.
The challenge with that is they don't expect us to show up, right? There's no rules for us to show up. But then you open your mouth. Are you speaking?
The audacity.
Not only did she have the audacity to show up, now she's actually talking, and she's bringing receipts, and she's talking sense, and she wicked smart.
Wow.
And it's like, you know what? We are going to try to chop
Yes.
you down.
They will try to bury you.
Bury.
Yeah.
And that when you stand and you stare at power and you say, bring it, try it.
Yeah.
I wish you would. They could come with all their might, but honestly, this universe always unfolds as it should, and it always unfolds in my favor. So bring it on.
I think yes, bring it on, because I know that you stand in your power and your truth. And we talked in the car when we did our ride along about reconciliation without truth.
Mm.
It can't happen. And you called the reconciliation the party.
Right. So that's the celebration. So you can't build a reconciliation, a relationship, a rapport, if you are building it on a foundation of lies or half truths or a truth that makes you feel comfortable. So I can't say everything because you're not going to feel comfortable. So I'm going to tell you part of it. Or
Right.
I'm not going to say any of it because why are you bringing up that up again? That wasn't me. That was my ancestors. That wasn't anything. I may have benefited from it, but I mean, it's not relevant anymore. I mean, stop it. Honestly, just stop.
I honestly believe that a lot of people are just completely, they don't want to look and don't know how to look at it.
No.
How to place themselves in it because they think of themselves as good people. I'm a good person.
I'm not saying you're not a good person.
Right.
But good people who want to act with the courage to change a system need to actually start with a Google search, right? Like figure out where the root of the problem is. You could do that on your own, right? So residential schools, you find, hundreds of thousands of children's bodies. Don't start asking around like, well, I just didn't know.
Right.
Well, shame on you, first of all. But secondly, do your homework. I mean, don't ask Celina, what books do I need to read? And I'll be like, well, 21 things you didn't know about. Why do I need to do that?
21 things I didn't know.
I mean, honestly, I could point to the books that you could read, but that's not my job.
Right.
Now, if you read 21 things I need to know about the Indian Act and you have a question about something particular, sure, I will help you. But don't ask me what books you need to read. Don't let me do your homework for you. We stopped that in grade school.
Right. You know who else does that a lot? Amanda Seals. And can I just mention, she's another woman from Grenada. I don't know what's going on with these Grenadian women.
Grenadian women are actually like the dons of we are like of the world.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah, that's very obvious because
look at us.
You're very opinionated. I'm very opinionated. But the thing that Banky's opinionated, but what keeps us in our power is our truth. I really hold because my truth is my freedom.
Yeah.
You can't tell me something about myself that I haven't already looked at within myself. So you can't hurt me with that.
And I'm not willing to have a conversation about. Let's talk about it. I'm not going to leave my. First of all, I say if more than one person knows your secret, it's not a secret. Duh. Like what?
Right.
Right. So don't hide it. So that's why you can't let somebody else find it and narrate your story.
Yeah.
Be the owner of that story. Good or bad, right or wrong, it's irrelevant. It's yours.
It's your story.
Embrace it, love it, kiss it, hug it.
Absolutely. Go back and get what you need and bring it forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about the Vidal years. So Vidal is the hubby. The hubby that still makes you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I read about how you guys met and how he made you feel, I don't know why, but I got a feeling of and it sounds strange, but I got a sense of your grandfather.
Oh,
I don't know why. It doesn't explicitly say that, I don't think. But
yeah, it does. It does. So yes. So you're recalling part of the book where my grandfather, I actually had a dream because everything with Vidal was happening like really, really fast. I should say Dr. Chavannes was happening really, really fast, right? And so we met on May 2 for a weekend and we were married like 6 months later on January 2nd. And everything was happening so fast. I was pregnant in October. I was supposed to go to Australia. I had to refund the money. Everything was just like, woo. And then I had this dream, the only time I've ever dreamt of my grandfather since he passed. And the dream was basically saying like Vidal was being clothed by what appeared to be like an angel type figure. He was like dressing him or putting a robe on him. Yeah. And Vidal looked down at me and said, your grandfather sent me to take care of you. And you know what? That's why, as much as Vidal gets on my nerves most time, I can't divorce him because I know he was like sent.
He was sent. When I see the interaction of you and your family, especially the two of you, there is real love there. And I wish it was more public because we don't see that very often.
I know, but Vidal's not me. I like the spotlight. I like the light. Like I like put the spotlights on me all the time. And he's like, babe, we don't have to tell everything. We don't have to do everything on the internet. I'm like, why not? Why can't we do everything on the internet?
Wow. Well, what was it like formulating your business and doing all of those things where you have to choose the balance? That's the word for this stage in your life. Is there such thing as balance? What did you do to attempt balance between personal and career?
Well, I would say, and I wrote, when I gave a copy of my book to Vidal, I wrote inside it. And the first sentence that I wrote was, I am here because you are there. And it doesn't matter where here is. I am here sitting with you because he's finishing dinner there. Right. I am here in politics or in Ottawa because he's at home. I am here starting my business because he is there. And then when I am here, looking after the kids while he's doing his doctorate, he's there. So there's that. It allowed me to prioritize. So there wasn't a balance.
Yes.
But the relationship with him and with our children allowed me to prioritize things. It allowed me to say, look, I am not looking after, I don't do morning shifts. I still don't do morning shifts. I don't make lunches for kids. I don't drop them to school. I don't do none of that.
Oh, wow.
I don't wake up in the morning. I don't put gas in my car. I don't take out the garbage. I don't, like, there's just certain things I just
How
don't.
did you get a man to want to marry you? And can you just break the secrets? Because, or is it?
Look, if you feed, you know what they say that thing is you teach people how to love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do that. Like if you feed it, it will grow. So if I actually said, oh, I'll take morning shifts every now and again, knowing full well that I hate getting up in the morning, then that would grow. I would be getting up in the morning resentful. And so I do like dinners and stuff in the evenings. He gets up and does the morning shift. We just have that thing where we prioritize what each other needs in the moment that we need it.
Yes. You approach your relationship in how can I serve you? But here are my boundaries because this is what I can do.
Yes. Go and there are things that I just won't do. Like I do not put gas in my vehicle. Like, and when I get in the vehicle and it's like dirty or it's like it doesn't have gas, You would think that Armageddon was coming, right? Where is the
But you know what? Vidal, to glorify your husband a little bit here, a lot of men will think that that's emasculating, but there is nothing emasculated about your husband. He is very much a masculine man, but just understands how to make his wife happy. That is so awesome. That dynamic is just like, if I could just bust some shots, I would. Thank you for these sound effects. Like that's that
No,
is
he does. And that's how we've always been. Like, I am spoiled rotten. I am. I could admit that. But so is he.
exactly.
He's spoiled. He is the love of my life. I will do anything for him. He knows that. He will do anything for me. I know that. I might take advantage of that every now and again, whereas he can't take advantage of that.
But he would never ask you to do something that he knows damn well that you don't want
No.
to. That's the respect aspect.
No. He wouldn't. It wouldn't even be a consideration.
Right. Okay, I have some politics words here.
Yeah.
So you brought into Parliament Hill the word dope. Talk to me about the dopeness that you brought to Parliament Hill.
Everything being authentically Celina. Just when was that? Oh shoot!
Yes, Vidal.
Right on cue. The doctor puts it right on cue. I didn't know he was watching.
I didn't know either.
I forget the question now, babe. Get off the internet.
It's about the dopeness that you bring to.
Oh yeah, it was in March of 2018, rocking my braids and saying that, Black women, and I didn't have to say Black women, because once I said the size of our lips, the size of our hips, the size of our breasts, I think Black women were like,
oh, she's talking about me.
Sister girl talking about me, right? And then I said, like, our braids, our weave, like that belongs everywhere. And especially when you consider our classrooms, when you are censoring children based on their hair in classrooms.
But people actually think that that's something that only happens in the United States.
No, it was the reason why it was TDSB. It was the Toronto District School Board.
So for someone in the Toronto District School Board was being shamed for what?
She was removed from a classroom because her hair was too poofy.
Come on. In 2018, Canada.
Girl.
So why were they surprised then that you said this? Did they not know that this was going on?
Well, it's not their experience, right? So we would watch that, and I think most people watch that and say removed from a classroom and just kind of glaze it over because they're not understanding like the complexity of the hair, thing. Yeah. I watch it and be like, oh hell no, we're not going to do this today. And so speaking about it, and when people said to me, why are you speaking about hair in federal parliament? It's because people kept giving me one of the biggest microphones in the country. So why wouldn't I speak about what we talk about every single day at the water coolers? We don't talk about sports. We don't talk about, who won the game or who watched that TV show. We are also talking about, the microaggressions, which I don't like to use, the everyday racism, the sexism, the things that happen to us that nobody wants to talk about. And so I was like, you know what? We're going to talk about it, and I'm going to rock some dope braids while I'm doing it. I'm going to make sure the Speaker of the House knows that they're dope. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. That was all life, let me tell you, which makes me think about, because I see time is running out, but I want to be able to put on the table the importance of the power in the people and how many of us don't feel an entitlement to take up space in Parliament the way that you did, because we see what you went through. It's kind of like a lynching, like the effect of hanging people to make a point to the others who don't even think about coming here if you see what we did to her. How do we create a new relationship with politics for the power of the people?
We have to first create the relationship and know that we deserve to be there. We have committed to the political, economic, social well-being and affluence of this country, and every other. And so we deserve to be there. And so that relationship, that understanding that we have just as much right to be there as anybody else is important. It's a mindset. You have to understand that. And then understand that, okay, what happened to Celina? She was one of 338 members of parliament, the only Black woman there. How do we not make that experience where she's alone to fight off, the wolves? How do we do that? We run together. We run in packs. And when we get there, we could disagree on policy, which we do anyway. We have all of these members of parliament that were like, we elected and we're like, oh, I don't agree with him on that. But we won't elect each other because one's conservative and one's liberal. Like,
Right.
make it make sense. We already are doing that.
Well, how do we, okay, so I hope we can get this in, because I want to understand this. Ever since I was little, all I hear was, you have to vote liberal. You have to vote liberal. This is what I hear in my home. But then sometimes some of the conservative people would say something that was like, oh, I kind of get what they're saying. And then the NDPs seemed the most empathic group that I've ever seen, because they were really trying, it seemed like they were talking for the people. But there was something about that was not what my family thought they should align with because of our socioeconomic status, I'm assuming. So how do people go through these parties, these things, conservative, liberal, NDP? How do we interact with this? Teach us.
So I would say you can't vote. You have to vote in the best interest of our community. And I do believe that is a center or a left-leaning vote. Now, that is not to say that I know that there is, I talk to Leslie Lewis all the time, clearly conservative. Again, we could disagree on policy.
Yes.
The ends of the earth. And in fact, most times when I meet people and we're friends, I don't know what their political affiliations are. Hey, LA, how are you? My name's Celina. I'm a liberal. Like, we don't do that. We get to know people first, right? And we understand that, yes, there may be things about them or things about a particular party or a political mandate that is most in line with something that's fundamental to them. But I think most people are reasonable people. And so it is very much up to the individual, but I think what's in the best interest of communities of color, of communities who are often the poorest and most marginalized, is center and center left.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to see what happens, because I hope you go back into the parliament. I hope you become our prime minister one day. And that would be, wow, that would be phenomenal. When I talk to people on this show, I always end with, what do you thirst for in life? Mm-hmm. And what's coming next? What is next for Celina?
So I'm on a very deeply spiritual journey right now. And so I always say, I know I'm doing my PhD right now in neuroscience. I'm continuing to produce products. I just made an app. I did I'm still doing stuff, but I'm very clear about saying that I'm doing now next.
Right.
I continue to be mindful and present and want to ensure that when I'm with you, LA, that I'm 100% focused on our conversation, that the now, the present, the things that has been distracting me because I'm constantly looking for next doesn't continue to run my life.
Right.
Now is my next.
Now is my next. Woo, you're thirsty for now.
Yes, to just be present, to love the present. There is no time. There is no past. There is no future. There is only now. There's only the present. There is no time like the present, or there is no time. Love the present.
I love it. Thank you so much. So how do people reach you, and how can they reach out to connect with you and maybe push you into more politics?
So all of my socials, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is at I am Celina CC. And my website is celinacc.ca, where there's access to my book and my app and any other information about me.
And that's where they can go and get the book.
They can go get the book there. Yeah. celinacc.ca.
Amazing. I can't wait to do this documentary with you. I know you have some work coming up in Kenya, but we are going to be telling an amazing story that is inclusive, and it's not just about representation. And that's something that we can all be proud of. Thank you for spending this cocktail hour with us. Thank you. I got it. Thank you, Business Takeout. We are so happy to have you, Celina. God bless you. All the best, and keep in the now.
Thank you. Thank you to Business Takeout. Thank you to CockTale Hour. Thank you to everybody listening and watching. And LA, such gratitude for you. Thank you, my love.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next Monday. Peace.
If you enjoy our programming and want to help support Black entrepreneurship, please donate today. www.businesstakeout.com/donate.